Hey everybody, mark your calendars. It's ACC just announced the final official date of this year's conference championship game. The top two teams in the conference will go head-to-head December the 19th in Charlotte, but there's still a lot of football to be played before then, and this is Playbook. I am Chris Clark. Let's go ahead and get this thing started, shall we? Yeah, there are no divisions in the ACC this year, so those two teams in the championship game will be the two teams with the best winning percentage in conference games. And those two teams with the best winning percentage right now, no surprise, talk about top-ranked Clemson at 5-0 this season, with the fourth-ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish also undefeated. They're sitting there at 4-0. But right behind them and waiting to jump on any little slip-up are these two squads, the number 12 Miami Hurricanes and 15th-ranked North Carolina Tar Heels, sitting there both at 4-1. Meanwhile, Clemson, they've scored at least 40 points in all of their games this season, and the Tigers have doubled up nearly all of their opponents on the scoreboard this year as well. WSBA's Pete Yannity is covering the Tigers, who welcome Boston College to town on Saturday.
Clemson gets ready to take on Boston College, another noon game in Death Valley on Saturday. Tigers will try to stay unbeaten both in conference and outside of it, going for a 7-0 start. Now, it's a Tiger team that's going to be without James Skalski, one of their starting linebackers, kind of the quarterback of their defense. He's going to miss the game this weekend and could miss action beyond that, according to head coach Dabo Swinney, who says that a groin issue that kept Skalski out of the Syracuse game will require arthroscopic surgery. That means that Jake Venables, the son of the defensive coordinator, will step into a very key role on the Tigers defense, especially when facing a pretty complex Boston College attack.
This is the game, especially to have a guy, because I mean they're a challenge formationally, schematically in what they do. A lot of motions and shifts and things that you have to be able to process. So definitely thankful that we've got a veteran guy like Jake who really understands and gets it.
By the way, another note that got headlines on the week and maybe turned into a bigger story than the Skalski news is the fact that Trevor Lawrence Tuesday was asked by the media if he'd had any second thoughts about departing early after this season for the NFL. And he said, although it's his plan to do that, he is leaving the door open to any possibilities. That immediately got social media and national websites all in a tizzy about the potential of a return to school next season. For now, the smart money is probably on Lawrence making the jump. Covering the Clemson Tigers, I'm Pete Yannity.
Thanks a lot, Pete. More than just wins and losses on the line here this week as the two teams play for the O'Rourke McFadden Trophy, which was created in 2008 by the Boston College Gridiron Club to commemorate the tradition at Clemson and Boston College while honoring the legacy of Charlie O'Rourke and Banks McFadden. Now, O'Rourke and McFadden are both members of the College Football Hall of Fame who played during the leather helmet era. Here's a look at the trophy there. I just like the trophy mean mugging. Face of the guy makes me laugh. All right, fun fact, it was Clemson coach Dabo Swinney's first win in 2008. All right, on to the game. Coach Hafley had a special nod to Clemson's running back Travis Etienne, saying the way he runs, he just looks like he's on a mission constantly. He said Trevor Lawrence has gotten better from last year, but he saved his biggest praise for their defensive coordinator, Brent Venables, and the players that he had on the squad.
They're really good up front. The two tackles, just from first glance, seem like really good players. I know the rookie, number 11, he's going to be a big-time player. 47, the middle linebacker, I think. I don't think he played last week. Just looking through the cut-ups and watching. He's like your old-school, traditional middle linebacker, tough, sees it. You can tell he's a smart kid, well-coached. 13, and then the other DBs, I think 1'6", 26, just going quickly off of memory. I mean, they're good and they're well coached, and he gets creative and has fun with them, and he lets those guys play fast because they can run and hit.
Kickoff is Saturday in Clemson, 12 noon. And after escaping with just a 5-point win over Louisville 2 weeks ago, Notre Dame came back to a rollover pit in the Steel City, beat the Panthers up 45-3. And as WTTV's Chris Widlick reports, the Irish will have to avoid a trap game at Georgia Tech this weekend. Chris?
We finally saw the Notre Dame team that the coaching staff envisioned. A 45-3 pasting of Pitt in the first road game of the year for the Irish involved because of a few things. Ian Book establishing some long sought-after chemistry with his new receivers that opened up the playbook, and Brian Kelly dialing it back in practice so his team was fresh and hungry on both sides of the ball.
Really having a great attitude and going through the week and being detailed about our preparation. If we start there and continue to do the things that we've done week in and week out for the last 3.5 years, that sets us up for us to go and look at the way we played against Pittsburgh with that great energy, that mindset that I want to be a playmaker. So what we want is to add more playmaker mentality to our entire team. Let it go. Play fast, play free.
And playing fast and free comes with confidence. And the fourth-ranked Irish need to keep that rolling as they head to high-scoring Georgia Tech, where a victory in Atlanta sets them up for the game of the year. #1 Clemson in South Bend on November 7th. Covering the Irish for Playbook, I'm Chris Woodlick.
Okay. We're focused on Week 8 in the ACC here, Playbook. But he's right. We're already looking ahead to this one, too. A week from Saturday on November 7th, it could be the game of the year. #1 Clemson heading to South Bend to take on the 4th-ranked Fighting Irish. We'll be all over that one next week. But first, Notre Dame has a game to play this weekend. Kickoff in Atlanta against Georgia Tech set for 3:30. And with a closer look at the Yellow Jackets is WJBF's Colin Cody. Colin?
For the second time in as many home games, Georgia Tech welcomes a top 5 opponent to Bobby Dodd Stadium when #4 Notre Dame comes to visit for an Atlantic Coast Conference matchup this Saturday. Tech and the Fighting Irish are renewing their rivalry for the 36th time in a series that dates back to 1922. But they're squaring off in a conference matchup for the first time. Notre Dame, which is a full-time member of the ACC in all sports but football, is playing a full ACC slated schedule due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Notre Dame holds the all-time record, winning the last 2 of 4, though, were Georgia Tech. Here's what Coach Collins had to say about pulling off the upset this week.
Play physical, they play hard. There's a lot of good things that we can say about them, and I will say about them because I've got a tremendous amount of respect for that program and how they play. Big guys that play physical, that have really good effort, are very athletic, have a good scheme that complements what they have on the roster, and we will continue to build ours in a not so dissimilar manner.
Kickoff from Bobby Dodd will be at 3:30 p.m. and coverage will be held on ABC. Covering the Yellow Jackets, I'm Colin Cody with ACC Playbook.
Good stuff, Colin. Thank you as always. And 15th-ranked North Carolina coming off a big win over rival NC State. Now a road trip to Charlottesville to take on Virginia in prime time Saturday night. Oh, that matchup's going to be great. WNCN's Alyssa Ray joins us live now. And Alyssa, so far, prime time hasn't boded too well for the Tar Heels.
No, it hasn't, Chris. The Heels' only loss came at the hands of Florida State in an 8 p.m. kickoff a couple weeks ago. The coaches have been trying to get the players prepared mentally for another night game all week, and I expect them to respond very well. We know the Carolina offense is stacked with weapons, but since halftime of that Seminoles game, the defense has stepped up to the plate. The Heels shut out FSU in the second half, and last week against NC State, they held the Wolfpack just 34 rushing yards.
Florida State's quarterback ran it better than I want him to, and their running back. And then last week, we just stepped back up and played really, really well. So I really feel like that's a huge part of who we are here moving forward. If Virginia can run the ball on Saturday night, we'll get beat.
Coach Brown reminded me a few times last week about the last 28 games, or I guess 29 games in the series now. Whoever won the rushing title was going to win. So we kind of went in saying we were going to take away the run and make them throw it. And I think once that got established, then it became a pretty one-sided game.
Brown said that their run defense looked good early in the season, but that's because no one really tested them. That was until Virginia Tech rushed for 260 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Now, speaking of that running game, North Carolina been very successful in doing so. Anybody out there slowing down that backfield at all? Anybody?
The short answer is I doubt it. We talk about Michael Carter and Javonte Williams every week, and if they keep producing like they have been, we will continue to. They both broke the 100-yard rushing mark against the Pack and combined for 4 TDs.
Before I let you go, got one question. Do they both go over 100 yards again?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Liz. That's what I'm talking about.
Thanks, Chris.
Just go ahead and just right there, out with it, no problems at all.
Speak it how it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
Telling it like it is, Alyssa Ray, WNCN. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
Kickoff in Charlottesville is coming at you live in prime time at 8 o'clock with a look at the Cavs' perspective on this one. WRIC's Natalie Calabit. Natalie?
The Virginia Cavaliers lost last week, but they had one of their best performances of the season at Miami. UVA was in it until the end, falling by the 19-14 final.
Head coach Bronco Mendenhall saw mostly good things from his offense.
The yards as well as the time of possession, a lot of those things were pretty favorable. Not many big plays. The play to Terrell Jana was probably one of the main big plays in the game. Keaton had some nice runs. So more methodical. The ground game was working well. The pass game in terms of short and intermediate, but not many significant chunks.
The other side of the ball had a good night too.
The performance of the defense and lack of turnovers really has been something we've been targeting, and that got us really close. And then miscues and kind of, penalties at the wrong time got in the way of it.
Now it's on to another ranked opponent, number 15, North Carolina. The Tar Heels' veteran offense has been humming around quarterback Sam Howell.
That's why it's so great to have a returning quarterback every year. That piece, but man, if you happen to have running backs and receivers also, that's, it's a blessing. Rarely does it happen with that number of players coming back. So yes, I think they're better, and I think that's why they're having, it's one of the main contributing factors for their success.
Saturday's action in Charlottesville starts at 8 o'clock. Covering Virginia, I'm Natalie Calabat.
All right, we've given enough credit to the ACC teams at the top of the rankings, but there aren't many teams hotter right now than Wake Forest. Since starting the season 0-2, the Demon Deacons have won not one but 3 in a row, including that upset of then-ranked Virginia Tech last Saturday. Here to help us see if the Deacons can keep this thing rolling, WGHP's Kevin Conley. Man, hey, Wake Forest 3-2, right, a 3-game win streak. Wake seems to have improved throughout the season. How do the Deacons get it done, man?
Well, you got to give a lot of credit to head coach Dave Clawson. He has certainly kept this team together. Now, in the very beginning of the year, they started against Clemson, so you lose to Clemson. There's no shame in that. They're the best team in college football right now. Then they go on the road at NC State, and they play a pretty good football game, but they lose 45-42. So again, no shame in that because that was a fabulous football game. And again, things could have gone either way at that point. They seem to sort of get their footing in a non-conference game against Campbell where they put up 66 points, a record 66 points. And then since then, they've incrementally gotten better game after game. You really have to be impressed with the performance they put on last Saturday against Virginia Tech. They had an outstanding defensive effort. They had just enough offense, but really the defense is what stepped up in that game against Virginia Tech that helped them keep that winning streak alive.
It's funny you should mention defense there because Wake Forest defensive back Nick Anderson has taken college football by storm. His story from walk-on to defensive stars gathered national attention. Tell us a little bit more about Anderson and how he got to this point.
All right, now the interesting thing is he is a walk-on, okay? But he was a preferred walk-on, which means he was recruited by the Wake Forest coaching staff. He wasn't just a student walking on campus that went to a general tryout and then made the team. He was a preferred walk-on. So the coaches kind of knew that he had the potential to be a very good college football player at some point. I don't think they thought he was going to be a star in just his second game playing in the ACC, but he really is a fabulous story because when his opportunity presented itself, he was ready, he was prepared, and that's the thing that head coach Dave Clawson has talked about so much this week in all the stories about Nick Anderson, that he didn't consider himself a walk-on, he didn't consider himself a guy that was going to eventually play at some point in his career. He was prepared to play right away. And when they had some injuries, particularly at safety, they just plugged him right in there, and Nick Anderson was able to do the job. But deep down inside, the coach's staff knew they had a little something in Nick Anderson. That's why they made him a preferred walk-on.
Well, no harm in keeping an ace up your sleeve there. I mean, he comes in, no scholarship. Now he's got one starting next year. What is it? I'd say that's a pretty good success story regardless. But moving on here, Wake Forest at Syracuse. How's this game shaping up there, Kevin?
Well, the thing is, Wake Forest, this is the first time that the Demon Deacons have had to leave the state of North Carolina since they all returned back to campus back in July. So that'll be interesting to see sort of how they deal with all the COVID protocols that are in place, particularly in the state of New York. When they travel up to New York, they're not going to be able to leave the hotel. Head coach Dave Clawson has said he's a little upset that he won't be able to go on his pregame run that he does before every single game. So, I mean, they're going to have to adjust for those particular cases or those particular instances. But as for the game, you got to be careful when you go on the road in the ACC. It is not easy to win road games. And Dave Clawson has said on multiple occasions he's got a tremendous amount of respect for Dino Baber at Syracuse. So expect Wake Forest to really try to turn up the offense. They've got a great running game. They've got two really fabulous running backs in Christian Beal-Smith and Kenneth Walker. I mean, you know, they start on any team in the country, and they share that position at Wake Forest, and they are really, really getting the job done. So if Wake Forest can run the football, I truly believe that they have an opportunity to win this game on Saturday.
Okay, well, from the sounds of it, you're a busy man. I don't want to keep you any more than I have to right now. I'll let you get to that hotline. Is that Coach Collins? Is it breaking news? Don't let us know.
That's
just
right. Yeah, Coach Clawson's saying, you know, Kevin, you were spot on with that running game analysis. Because when Wake runs the football, they have a great opportunity to win.
Well, don't give away any more secrets. You want to see a good game up there in the Dome. We definitely won't be sleeping on the Deacons anymore this fall. Enjoy the game Saturday, man.
All right, thank you. You too.
Kickoff in Syracuse is at noon Saturday, and as WSYR's Stephen Fonte reports, depending on which Orange team shows up, could be a tricky matchup for Wake Forest.
Well, it's one of Dino Baber's favorite phrases, consistently good, not occasionally great. And that's what he wants his teams to be. But before the Orange can be consistently good, they first just need to be consistent. And that has been an ongoing problem for this program. The last month has been a perfect example of that. After picking up a convincing win over Georgia Tech, Cuse turned right around and gave up a total of 700 rushing yards in back-to-back losses at home to Duke and Liberty. The Orange then followed that up by going on the road and putting a scare into the top-ranked Clemson Tigers for 3 quarters. Even Dino Babers himself is having a hard time explaining the turnaround against Clemson, especially with all of their young guys on the field due to injuries. The important thing now is to build on that effort moving forward.
They look like 2 different football teams. It's something that I'm really proud of the way they competed against Clemson. I'm not so proud about the way they competed against the other guys. But what we need to do is I'm striving for these young people and for ourselves to be consistent, because that's what you need to do. So we're trying and moving that way as fast as we can, but with the drastic age groups that we have, it's taken us a little bit longer than what I would anticipate.
Next up for the Orange is a visit from Wake Forest on Saturday. SU has beaten the Demon Deacons each of the last 2 seasons. It'll be a noon kick inside the Dome. Covering Syracuse, I'm Stephen Fonte.
Thank you, Steve. And Virginia Tech, they were ranked before they came up short on their trip to Wake Forest. And as WFXR's Jermaine Farrell reports, the Hokies are definitely motivated to right the ship this week. Jermaine?
An inability to convert in the red zone, 3 turnovers and 10 penalties hurt number 19 Virginia Tech last Saturday. The Hokies fell 23-16 to Wake Forest in an ACC game at Trist Field. Now with the loss, the Hokies fell to 3-2 overall and 3-2 in ACC play. Tech fell behind 10-0 in the first quarter and never led in this one. In fact, the Hokies did tie the game at 10 in the second quarter. Hendon Hooker threw a touchdown, but he had 3 costly interceptions for the Hokies. Meanwhile, Khalil Herbert, the star running back, rushed for 64 yards on 14 carries. The Hokies struggles in the red zone. Tech made 4 trips inside the Wake Forest 20, but only converted those into 2 Brian Johnson field goals.
Oh, I mean, I think this season is a season like no other. It certainly has amplified that, just from player availability, uncertainty, coach availability, continuity, lack of practice. I mean, you just go on down the list. And again, I'm not making excuses. I'm just, you know, those are the facts of the situation we're in. I think you see it across the country. You know, when you don't play well, if you are super talented, you can overcome it. You know, and you hope that you find a way to win the ball game and can teach the lesson off a win.
I can see it during the game, like with guys like just being down, like being upset about what's going on. So we weren't really like locked in on the sideline. And you could see Wake Forest sideline was completely different than ours. They just had the momentum the whole game. So we knew that was something that we had to pick up. Whenever you have heart and you lose a football game, you're going to do everything in your right power to not lose the next football game. So I feel like we got a lot of guys on this football team that just want to win. And when we lose, we're not going to take a L. Like, we're not going to take it lightly and just like, oh, now we're just going to keep losing the rest of the season. Like, no, it's when we take a loss, we all look at that loss as the same and want to win the next game. So we're going to make sure that we win the next game.
Now, the Virginia Tech Hokies will meet up with the Louisville Cardinals for the 8th time this Saturday. Tech leads the series 5-2. Now, the last time these teams met was in the Gator Bowl on January 2nd, 2006. The Hokies getting a 35-24 win. Tech and Louisville will be meeting for the first time since Louisville joined the ACC in 2014, a byproduct of the scheduling from the ACC through that model. Now, we asked head coach Justin Fuente about the ACC scheduling model. He took a diplomatic approach with his answer.
Yeah, I find the ACC scheduling model perplexing. But I and I always challenge our staff to do this and our players. Like, I prefer not to be the person that complains about the problem without having the solution. I don't know what the solution is. I do think it's odd. I think it's, in some ways unfortunate. It is such a cool league. With unique schools and some regional some regional benefits that I think are really unique and maybe only to the ACC that I think we don't get to take advantage of because of the way it's scheduled out. But I don't have the solution, so I'm not going to go on a rant complaining about it. But it is odd.
And I have to agree with Coach Fuente. It is odd, but guess what? The Hokies, they do have that opportunity this Saturday. They hook up with the Louisville Cardinals. That's going to be a 4 o'clock kickoff from Cardinal Stadium in Louisville. Covering the Virginia Tech Hokies, I'm Jermaine Farrell.
Thank you, Jermaine. You can count me among those that think that scheduling is odd as well. And after winning their first game of the season, Louisville, they couldn't find a win after that. They lost 4 in a row. Now, although 2 of those losses were to Miami and to Notre Dame, and 3 of them were on the road, but I digress regardless here. As WEHT's Randall Parmley reports, it was still a huge win for the Cards when they dominated Florida State. Randall.
Well, the Louisville Cardinals picked up a much-needed win over the weekend. The Cards snapped a 4-game losing streak and picked up their first conference win of the year, blowing out Florida State 48-16. That Louisville offense was on fire, racking up 569 yards. Head coach Scott Satterfield says better practices have led to better play on Saturday.
I just felt like, early on in the year, just too many things that were not tightened up with, being on time or certain guys here and there. I'm not saying it was the whole team, but I mean, you take a few guys here and there, and then it just kind of permeates throughout the team. And just the amount of focus that we've had the last 2 weeks has been really, really good. And the guys' eagerness to get here and to want to be here. And I think you can just sense it. And it's not just, in the meetings, but it's, it's coming in the weight room, it's coming in the training room, all those things that you want, championship caliber teams to be about. I think that's what our guys have been doing the last couple of weeks.
The Cards host Virginia Tech Saturday afternoon, going for back-to-back wins. Covering the Louisville Cardinals, I'm Randall Parmley.
Thank you, Randall. Kickoff between the Cards and Hokies coming up on Saturday. Kicks off at 4 o'clock. And the Duke Blue Devils, they took last week off, and it came at, just the right time. Almost smack dab in the middle of the season. Squad practiced 3 times that week, repping out and ironing out all of the things that have plagued them the first 6 weeks of the year. Things like turnovers, third down, consistency. It's been a rough go of it for the Blue Devils, but the saying goes, tough times don't last, but tough people do. And the Blue Devils are nothing if not tough.
You want to surround yourself with resilient people. And certainly we have resilient people here. Players, coaches, everybody involved in Duke football has been tremendous during a very difficult time. They came to work, and we got outstanding work done during the open date, and I know our players are ready to get back on the game field and play a game.
Anytime you get to get some R&R, and it's definitely much needed. And mentally, I mean, you can look at it as this is a kind of a break in that it divides the season a little bit, and we can kind of regather our mind and go back after attack. Want to go 5-6-0.
Getting back to the overcoming adversity theme here, the Duke Blue Devils have had their fair share of adversity on the injury front. They've had to overcome. Their biggest issue came right at the heart of their attack, center. First, they lost Jack Wallaba early in the year with a knee injury. Will Taylor filled in admirably, but then they lost him against NC State also to a knee injury. Stepping in is freshman Barton Graham. He finished the state game, and at 6'6", 315 pounds, oh, he fits the bill. But, Coach, is Graham ready for the rigors of starting under center?
Graham never dreamed he would be starting at center for Duke. He probably dreamed he was going to start at tackle one day. But here he is, and he will be our starting center. He's an extremely talented young man. He's got good people around him. Those other guys, I think offensive linemen are built that way. They know when to step up for another guy.
Next up, the Blue Devils face the Charlotte 49ers. Their Conference USA team, yes, but they gave App State trouble and beat up North Texas as well as UTEP. It's a squad Duke should beat. I stress should. I mean, they still have to dot the I's and cross the T's, though, which has been a bit of a problem there in Durham. They should look familiar to the Blue Devils as well, as 49ers head coach Will Healy runs a similar style of offense and defense.
There's some similarities to what they do defensively. Certainly offensively, they're multiple. I think they're really creative offensively. Everything kind of evolves around the quarterback, who's very talented. Balanced run, pass, but definitely you can tell it's a Will Healy offense. They do an outstanding job.
They'll be under the lights at Wallace Wade Stadium in Durham this weekend. Kickoff Saturday night at 7 o'clock. The college football playoff picture is getting a little bit more interesting this week. So to break things down and get all the numbers straight for us, let's bring on Jason Logan from Covers.com. Jason, thanks for hanging out. Now, Clemson couldn't climb that massive mountain of points against Syracuse last weekend, but still cruised to a pretty comfortable win with the Tigers rolling and the Big Ten back in the mix and the Pac-12 soon jumping into the fray. What are Clemson's odds to win the national title now?
Yeah, so after last week, Clemson still the favorite here, plus 175 to win the national title. At the top of the board. The Tigers open around plus 225 when these odds hit the board after last year's title game, but that was before the whole COVID shutdown and this kind of weird, strange rollout to college football. Behind them is Ohio State, looked very, very strong in their 2020 debut, put the boots to Nebraska. Buckeyes plus 200. They opened at plus 400 back in the winter. And then Alabama rounds out kind of the favorites at plus 400. And that's kind of the three-horse race right now. If you look at the next teams, you're looking at a few SEC teams, and they're way down the board here because you got UGA plus 1,600, Florida plus 2,500, and then you're followed by Michigan and Notre Dame at plus 4,000 odds. And if we stick to the ACC, we see Miami way down there at plus 10,000. But Clemson is still the favorite here, especially after picking up that other win.
Yeah, Notre Dame made a huge statement in its first road win of the year. I mean, they blasted Pitt 45-3. The Irish stay on the highway this week, given 20 points to host Georgia Tech. Have the Irish turned a corner after some stumbles in the first half of their schedule?
Yeah, that was a tough task last week. He hung 45 points on what is a very good Pitt defense. Ian Book, he came out and looked really good. He struck for some big gains, and that just opened up the floodgates and opened up the playbook here. Georgia Tech, we all remember they got rolled 73-7 by Clemson. And while I don't see the Irish coming out and blasting them that bad, it kind of sets the bar for how bad you should beat this team and perhaps stay in the conversation for the ACC and even the national title race. The Yellow Jackets, they continue to just struggle with turnovers. And the Irish last week had forced 3 takeaways. Turn those into points. So if they can do the same thing with Georgia Tech here, make some mistakes, turn it into points, I think they could probably cover this spread with ease. The spread open Notre Dame minus 20. It's open minus 19. It's up to minus 20 now. And I think it's going to go even higher by kickoff, given that Notre Dame does have one of the more public fan bases out there. They just love to bet the Golden Domers. So if you do like the Irish in this game, you definitely want to get them under minus 21. Get that minus 20 right now because 21 is one of those key numbers in football at 3 touchdowns.
And that brings us to the night games. Got UNC visiting Virginia. The Cavs got quarterback Brennan Armstrong back last week, just in time, I might add, to put a nice little scare into Miami. Can Virginia do the same thing to the Tar Heels coming up Saturday night is the question.
Yeah, the early action seems to think so. We saw North Carolina open minus 7, and it's dropped to minus 6.5. And while that half-point move may not seem like a lot, that's a huge move in terms of football betting because you're coming off that key number of a touchdown. UNC has struggled against UVA in recent games. They've dropped 3 in a row to the Cavs. And Virginia has gone 4-1 ATS in the last 5 meetings with the Tar Heels. Armstrong, he did have a good game against Miami. 2 touchdowns, 181 yards throwing, 91 yards on the ground. But Virginia may not have the firepower to keep up with UNC here, and UNC can kind of hurt you in a bunch of different ways. They can run the ball on you, they can pass the ball on you. Virginia does have some injuries that really concern me heading into this game here. They had 2 starting safeties miss that game against Miami, and then they lost a starting corner in that game on Saturday as well, too. So there's been no real updates around the status of those guys. UNC comes in 10th in the country in terms of yards per completion at 9.5 yards per completion. The Cavs defense near the bottom of the country in terms of passing defense. They've allowed 9.9 yards per completion to opponents over their last 3. So when you factor in those injuries and maybe, UNC not taking the Cavs lightly here, I think things could get out of hand in Charlottesville.
He's Jason Logan, the man, the myth, the legend, breaking down the numbers so we don't have to. Thanks, Jason. Enjoy the games. It feels like a busy week in the ACC, but believe it or not, 4 of the 15 teams in the conference actually have the week off. Number 12, Miami, NC State, Pitt, and Florida State will all have an extra week to prepare for their next games, and that might come in handy. They all face off against each other next weekend. Miami travels to Raleigh to face NC State, and Pitt heads south to visit Florida State. It's all ahead in week 9. And the Miami Hurricanes, well, they might have this week off, but they head to the bye week looking and feeling great. 5-1, ranked 12th in both polls after that win over Virginia. And the Hurricanes, they got a few bumps and bruises to tend to, which is to be expected. So the downtime comes at just the right time. Not just to get healthy, but also to recruit. That coaching staff has to keep that talent pipeline flowing into South Beach. And well, let's face it, recruiting during the pandemic, that's tricky at best. Nice sweet spot to do it, too, considering the team's record. And speaking of sweet, can't talk about Miami's success without talking about their signal caller, Derek King. Perfect? No. But the Canes' offense is a whole lot better with him under center this season.
Certainly a large part of it is because of Derek. And it's not just even the performance on the field. I think he just gave us what we were so needing in terms of someone that the entire team can believe in and rally around. I think our players believe that every week we have a chance to win because he's our quarterback. And again, it just I know I said it before, but his ability to connect with all of his teammates makes everybody feel together. But then the fact that he's humble and he's a low ego guy, it's hard for anybody to kind of beat their chest and say I'm the man when you've got a guy like Derek who just kind of goes about his business in a calm way as he does.
And this bye week is also coming at a good time for Florida State. A couple of weeks ago, the Seminoles upset UNC, who was a top 5 team at the time, but they followed that with a 32-point loss at Louisville. WMBB's Courtney Mims is covering the Seminoles. Courtney?
The Florida State Seminoles taking a bit of a breather this week as they're in their second bye week of the year. It couldn't have come at a better time, too, as this team has a lot to work on after the 48-16 loss to Louisville this past weekend. So what does FSU have to work on? A few things. Their defense didn't execute the game plan this past Saturday and made a lot of mistakes out on the field, missed tackles and penalties. But the offense also couldn't score when it came time for them to do something on the field. The Cardinals accumulated 569 yards overall in the game, while the Seminoles earned 406. Now, the difference between them, only 2 of FSU's drives ended up in the end zone. That's something head coach Mike Norvell is hammering on in practice this week. Their offense has good drives, but too few points from them.
When you look at it, like we've been inside the red zone in the second half, numerous of times that we've come away with no points, or we've had a mistake or something that's a setback, and that has to end. One of the things that I do think is that guys get caught up on whether what the scoreboard is or the sense of urgency of the play, and rather than just focusing on going and doing your job.
But again, the second bye week is coming at the right time. FSU quarterback Jordan Travis was sore coming into the matchup on Saturday and is still sore this week. There's plenty of other FSU players who need to heal up before they are back in action against Pittsburgh on November 7th. Reporting on Florida State, I'm Courtney Mims.
Great stuff as always, Courtney. Thank you. And thanks for joining us for Playbook. Remember, you can watch a brand new episode every Thursday night at 7 right here. And until next week, get out there and watch some football, everybody. See you all next Thursday.